Hello, welcome to another episode of the Council of War. I was going to say this is a kind of a special, different episode, but we've done so few of these that I don't think we really have a standard style of episode anymore. So we're doing an episode. On this one, Tom and I are going to be having a run through our list for Clash of Kings 2021. Just having a talk about what list we brought, why we chose to bring them. We thought these might be slightly interesting to talk about because I've brought the new Halflings. And it's an army that not many people have seen before or had much experience with. But far more interesting for most people is that Tom actually won the tournament with, I'm not going to call it a fluffy list because it's got 4 Frostfangs running around, but it's an off-meta list. It's something a bit different. I think you'd agree, Tom. It's not the usual.
Yeah, and that's, well, I mean, what is usual for Northern Alliance, really, in fairness. But no, it's definitely not usual, and I think we'll get into why. Mainly because I have so many Mantic models, which dictate what my choice of list we're going to be.
It uses infantry. It's got actual good, honest infantry in it, and no ice elementals.
An actual hybrid infantry unit, which is useful.
And trolls, and it's a nice list. So as I say, we're going to talk through the list on here. We can also, Tom and I were both streamed at the weekend. I was on once on game 2, and Tom, I think you were on twice, weren't you, in the end?
Yeah, game 4 and game 6. Watch game 4, not game 6.
Well, spoilers, you won both of them because you won all of your games. But yeah. So I think without further ado, I'm just going to dive us in. So we're starting with the Halflings. I will mention that I'm going to put timestamps in the video. So by all means, if you're not bothered about listening to me ramble about my Halflings, you can skip ahead wherever you want to go in the video. So my Halfling list. So I think it's probably worth saying off the bat that I wanted to bring as balanced a Halfling list as I possibly could. More than anything else, this was me kind of playing around with bringing Halflings to a tournament. Obviously, I'd had quite a hand in designing them and done a lot of playtesting with them where I'd had to push Halflings to their extremes. So I've played all of the more obscure Halfling lists, all of the spam lists, all of the abusive lists, all of the things that aren't particularly actually that fun to play with. So I was really keen that when actually I came to painting models and going to a real life tournament to actually bring something mixed arms, fun and enjoyable, and that I could build 100% Mantic out of the models that have been released so far. So I'm by no means saying this is the most competitive Halfling list in the world. It's definitely not, but it is a nice balanced list that I think highlights a lot of the things that Halflings can do. And also the models are really nice for all of these. So that was kind of my ethos behind it. I wasn't bothered for making the most competitive, strongest list I possibly could. So I have a horde of braves, 2 troops of stalwarts with 200 weapons, because these are the new pole arms. I love them. 1 regiment of stalwarts with 200 weapons, 2 regiments of wild runners melee with relentless. And I'm glad to report that in the updated version, these are now called wild lancers. So we don't have this silly wild runners melee, wild runners ranged anymore. 2 regiments of wild runners ranged, 1 regiment of edge grenadiers, 1 regiment of aeronauts with the staying stone, 2 harvesters called Bert and Ernie, 1 iron beast with Pride of the Shires, the sorcerer with the mandatory mount and inspiring talisman, an engineer with the halfling long rifle, aura, wild charge +1, tinker only, and radiance of life, tinker only. So he was my Swiss Army engineer that came with everything. And a muster captain on winged arrows with relentless, and I've not included it on here, but he did have the brew of haste. I guess that's just funny, and I never got to do the thing, which I'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this was the list. It was the whole general idea of the Halfling sprue comes with a lot of infantry, a lot of cavalry, and I wanted to use all of it. I know you've played against it, Tom. I don't know what your kind of thoughts were on the list as a starter.
No, I really liked it. I like these kind of pick and mix as bits of everything. It does a bit of everything quite well. Obviously, you've got a nice block of defense 6 between Big Shield and the Pride of the Shire Iron Beast right in the middle, which is just obviously a nightmare for some people to deal with. And then the amount of little units here and there that are knocking about, which between the wild charge auras and the sorcerer and everything else, there's a lot of little interconnecting units there, which can amount to be at any point a unit can become a sudden problem, which is a nice thing to have.
Yes.
It's also a pain in the ass. With the last game I had in terms of practice, I only had like 3 games practice. Before I came, I played Elliot, and he beat me fairly handily with this list. So I went in thinking, oh God, my list sucks. Because if I come against this kind of bits of everything, I can't deal with the defense 6 elements. The shooting, I've got no answer to the shooting. Anything that's longer than like 12-inch range, I've got no answer to immediately. Anything 18-inch, I can't physically stop, because my arm is so goddamn slow. But it just a mixture of everything, which reminded to an absolute pain in the ass to play against.
It also helped that my wild runners decided that they were going to be tanks that game and just survive all of the damage.
Yeah, pack runners running up to 12-14 defense 3 wild runners and taking 3 turns to kill them, 2 regiments, flank charging them as well and getting not even waivers. And
it was wonderful. but like you said, I think the thing I really love about this list, because this obviously this is the list I took after winning 4-foot snake. It's a troll 4-foot snake with Varanga, and I took my very traditional sort of style of Varanga list, which was 3 hammers, chaff, support characters, that sort of thing. It was what I would class as kind of the original Kings of War meta of large infantry, big punchy things, chaff to get in the way, and then a bit of sprinkling around the side. Whereas this is a completely different list. This is, you need synergies to be working. Not a single one of these units by themselves can actually do much of anything. And so you really need everything to be working together. You need to be thinking about the different auras and the different units that can jump in and everyone helping each other out. So it was a nice challenge for me actually to bring something completely different and really have to think a little bit more than the Varanga, because the Varanga would just point and click and run forward and drink a lot of beer.
Yeah,
has its benefits in itself. So in terms of the list, the Braves were literally just there to be bodies. Tended to sit on objectives. They held tokens. They were usually deployed behind the lines because they were in the way. So they would be deployed kind of staggered back. They didn't need to be up front. They were used in one game quite effectively as chaff, because all the cavalry behind them is nimble, and so can get around that big hard footprint quite well. But normally they just sit back and don't really get involved in the game. You can occasionally spike dice with things like Braves Hordes, as Goblin players know, but usually Goblin players have got, 4 or 5 hordes of rabble, and I've got 1. So at no point was I relying on the Braves to do anything other than just exist and to survive. And they almost won me my game 5, but sadly couldn't take 6 rounds. Well, couldn't take 6 regiments of shots from Heart Piercers. They only survived 5. And finally died holding 3 of the push tokens, running for the board edge in blind panic. But didn't quite make it. The 2 stalwart troops really surprised me actually. These are some of the stars of my weekend. Every single game I deployed these 2 very, very first. And then the Iron Beast would go between the 2 of them, and the Harvesters would go either side of the Iron Beast, and then occasionally the Engineer would sit in the middle of that as well. And that was kind of my default deployment every single game, and it meant that I had 5 drops straight away that I knew exactly what I was going to do with. I was 5 drops up my opponent every time, because as soon as I put one of them down, I knew exactly where it was going. And like you said, it's a surprising amount of Def 6 in all that. The stalwart troops make really nice chaff, because they're headstrong from the Iron Beast, so they're not getting in the way too much. They can either charge something and do a bit of damage and then die, or if people charge them, they've got Harvesters and Iron Beast behind to punish whoever charged them. And a couple of times, people underestimated them or just couldn't kill them all. One of these in the flank took out a regiment of Dan's aeronauts, which I quite like the idea of the little halflings somehow swarming over with those flying planes. I got a couple of nice flank charges off of these over the weekend. And it surprised people, I think, how much damage they could do. Yeah,
obviously I ran a similar thing back in the day when pole arm troops were allowed to exist. And that was great, because obviously if you put you eventually, because the idea at the time was like, what do you run a Kingdom End list, which is the worst possible selection of units, and it was like semi-elite regiments of stalwart type foot guard and troops of polearms because their nerve is so horrific. And that kind of thinking. I wanted to make a crap list, and then I buffed it up by having the captain and two beasts of war in there who were actually good at the time. But more and more, it's finding like just a critical mass of little troops of two-handed weapon dudes running around. You're going to get flanks. You're going to cause some problems, and you've got so many units that someone was rocking up at the time when it was so popular. Your super elite shooter units like a horde of archers. Well, that's only going to kill one troop a turn.
You can still only target one a turn.
Yeah, I mean, it screw a regiment up, so who cares if it screws a troop up? You save loads of points there.
Yeah. I think somebody asked me on the Halflings Facebook page, aren't you worried about these being shot off or lightning bolted off? And I said, well, if you're shooting my stalwart troop, you're not shooting the Grenadiers, the Aeronauts, the Wild Riders, all these other things that actually would equally be terrified of a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Like, shoot them, please shoot my stalwarts. That's exactly what they're there for.
Cheap, and they don't go away that easily.
Yeah. No, they don't, especially because you can get the rally in there from the sorcerer.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things you can do. The regiment stalwarts as well, similar idea. It's 115 points for a little bit more nerve. With the rally, actually you're up to a 15-17 unit there then. It's often got headstrong near it. Again, these just survive longer than they had any right to do so often. But they're chaff level points. They can just get in the way and be a pain. So they were really nice to have. The melee wild runners, I think, surprised a lot of people. I think people underestimate how much punch they've got in them, especially when you're then pairing it up with things like the muster captain or with the grenadiers. They don't hit quite as heavy as knights, but they hit hard enough. And when you get another units into them, they will take things off on a front charge by themselves. They're really nice. And I absolutely love Relentless. Relentless worked out for me so many times. And I'll be keeping that on every one of them from now on, just for 5 points.
Oh yeah, it's good. Yeah, I like runners because they're like, you have medium cab, which like your mounted sergeants kind of thing. And obviously then you have your heavy cab, your knights, and the heavy cab running at melee 3, and your mounted sergeants at melee 4 with usually less attacks. And while runners just like bridge that gap where they're not quite medium because their nerve is just too low.
Yeah.
But they're obviously they can hit between Relentless, Thunder 1, and melee 3. You can hit as hard as a knight unit can, because Relentless gives you 3 rerolls, which is going to be pretty much as good as your Thunder 2.
Yeah.
So they've got a nice little light lancer kind of role, which you don't really see in Kings at the moment.
Yeah, and Nimble came in probably twice a game, every single game.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's great.
It's one of, if not the most powerful rule in the game.
Yeah.
It's so useful for me that you're always relevant all the time throughout the game. And not even just for the charges, just for that ability to run down a flank and pivot and be an absolute pain for people.
Definitely.
So powerful. Looking at these and how much I enjoyed the wild, well, I'm going to call them wild lancers. That's what they're going to become now. I'm looking again now to wonder if Fleabag riders from goblins are actually being overlooked a little bit, because Fleabag riders are getting a buff in the clash pack. They're less melee, but they're also vicious. And they're a similar kind of point. So, and they can take more beast cages. So I've never seen an army of goblins that really leans into the idea of Fleabag riders, but I think maybe people have been overlooking them because they're speed 10, aren't they, I believe?
Yep.
Nimble, as opposed to speed 8.
Yeah.
So I think there's a list there that people haven't quite cottoned onto yet of a lot of regiments of them.
Yeah, you can see a basis of mincer mobs, can't you, in the middle? Just a nice wall of defense 6 right in the middle, and then you're using your speed 10 regiments of Fleabags that they can reach out and touch something to hold it down and do a bit of damage, or they can range up the flanks and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I say, I think there's a strong list that's maybe been overlooked at the minute. The wild runners ranged. These had the black powder upgrades, and I absolutely loved these. These I think were my biggest surprise of a unit when I first kind of started looking and was a bit annoyed that I could only take the gun options because there was no bows that came in the kit. And actually, for the points, it was worth it every single time, having the piercing on the shots. And these put out a really surprising amount of damage. Because obviously they've got that 18-inch range with the speed 8, they can get turn 1 shots. They can shoot and back up and usually stay out of range themselves of pretty much everything. And then obviously melee 4. So when they need to do, they get a flank charge. And I was really shocked about how much damage these were putting out. You know, they were shooting off defense 5, 15, 17 regiments over a course of a few turns. Because 14 shots will do it eventually. And when your dice spike, they really do spike. Really nice unit, much nicer than I thought. And I know you've always been a fan of the Mountain Scouts, haven't you?
Yeah. And it was always one of the things where you look and you price it up. You look at Mountain Scouts with the black powder, and you're like, you just a straight line and bolt, and they're in trouble. Was always the issue. It's a little bit cheaper on them now. Obviously, with Wild Runners getting Spellwood, it's not as much of an issue. And if you can get 2 regiments down supporting each other, you know, that brings in a lot of shooting actually.
Nice unit. And then I've got Regiment of Edge Grenadiers. Again, this plays into the idea of, you know, synergies building on top of synergies. I overestimated these to start with. I thought they were a combat unit in their own right, and they're very much not. They're gargoyles with an extra, you know, buff in combat. But you send these guys in by themselves, and you're going to be disappointed in what they're going to do. But that brutal D3 can be really powerful when paired with Wild Runners, or paired with Aeronauts, or paired with something else. But they're cheap enough that I don't mind throwing these guys as chaff. To be fair, the whole army's chaff. Most expensive thing in the whole list was the Iron Beast, I think at 240. And everything else is just dirt cheap. The Aeronauts, obviously infamous unit now, but they were fine here. If I was going to drop anything from the list, it would be the Aeronauts. I felt like I thought I was going to need more hitting, crushing strength than actually I turned out needing. The rest of the army was plenty fine and had plenty of killing power in it that I don't think I needed the Aeronauts. And weirdly, I found Speed 7 Fly a bit too slow and a bit too laborious to keep up with everything. So if I was going to drop anything, it would be the Aeronauts. And I think I would prefer to have another regiment of Wild Runners instead. They were a nice unit to have, but not the be all and end all. But yeah, my absolute MVPs were the Harvesters by a long way. I love these guys. I know you think these might be a little too cheap. I'm on the fence. I had one shot off in one go in the flank. And if you can get around them, they do die very quickly. But yeah, this is the punch of my list. They're consistently getting, you know, if you call it an average of 3 on the random dice, 11 attacks on melee 3, crush 1, thunderous 1 is still very, very good. I like this a lot.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I think they're probably the best thing in the list, especially you've got 2 of them running around with like an Iron Beast, and you can just have a proper, because obviously Halflings don't really get that much defensively. You need trolls really for a proper defensive line unit. Stalwarts aren't too bad, I guess, as a horde. But these are your proper absolute nightmare little units, because they've got such a small frontage when they're running together. You can get all 3 of them in fairly easily, and obviously since they're so small, you can put a sorcerer behind them all and affect all 3 of them, and you can get some real value for money out of just building up that the coverage that you can do with them. I think they're really good. I think the tempo is too cheap, to be honest, but it's not much of an issue.
Yeah, and you could be right. It's this thing of, I think they're really good when they've got everything else around them. Like the Headstrong from the Pride of the Shires, kind of is almost needed for them because 13-15 is quite low. But then when they've got Rally, but that's another sorcerer that needs to be there to do that, and it's another something else. But I agree that when all the pieces fall into place, these were the MVP unit by a long way. because as you say, these are the units that benefit the most from all those little buffs, because they've got built-in brutal, so they don't necessarily need the brutal aura. So they can really, so the sorcerer can spend its time rallying instead. Can have the Iron Beast there to add a few more attacks. I had so many times where I had a troop of stalwarts and a harvester go into something, and that's actually quite a scary amount of attacks. That's breaking units in one go kind of level of attacks. So yeah, the harvester and the Iron Beast are very much sort of paired together, and they I think were an excellent unit. Was very happy with them. The Iron Beast, we did our best not to make it so, but the upgrade is mandatory, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I have 2 of these now, and I'm really tempted to build the second one because it's cheap and cheerful without the Pride of the Shires upgrade. But the Inspiring and the Headstrong Aura is a big deal. Halfling's natural state is wavered, so having a Headstrong Aura is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
I massively overestimated the Iron Beast to start with. I think because it's a mecha pig with big tusks, that I thought it was going to be killier than it is. D6 plus 10 melee 4 crush 2 attacks is not very killer. It's a significantly worse troll horde, and people don't necessarily look at troll hordes and think that's a reliable killing unit. Is that?
Yeah, it's got the same attack profile pretty much as a frost giant, but not as much crushing, and people don't run frost giants because they're not killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth taking, and I will probably take it in most lists that I take, just for the fact that it's a big block of defense 6, Inspiring, and Headstrong or Nerve. But it's not the hammer that I thought it was.
I can see running 2 being a thing. Like you got 1 pride and then you've got 1 normal, because the normal one gets to the benefit of the Headstrong and the Inspiring, and they run together. There's a sorcerer nearby, and you can just pile some crap on them and just send them off, and the 2 of them between them will run the center on their own.
Yeah. Especially seeing as they're getting a buff.
Yeah.
So they're getting a bit more nerve. They're losing one of their rules because they feel a bit rule soupy at the minute. And yeah, I think it might be worth running one without Pride of the Shires. But if I was taking one, I would always upgrade it. I would find the points every single time. I don't see any reason not to.
Yeah.
I
think your issue is that you look at Iron Beast and you think, I'll take a harvester.
Yeah. But if you've already got 2 harvesters,
find the 3rd one.
True. If you've already got 3 harvesters,
that's a good point.
you want a second Iron Beast after you're Proud of the Shires, and there you are.
Yeah, but Halfling defense 6 wall.
I like halflings. I like that you can do things like that.
Yeah, they're good. No, they're good.
And all the other bump. And yeah, so sorcerer. I think this is probably going to become the standard build for your first sorcerer. Mount Inspiring Talisman. It's obvious, but it works. The mount is just mandatory, in my opinion. The fact that you can run at full whack and still use your auras, still use everything, is really powerful. I think one of the questions that somebody asked that I've not put on here is, was anybody caught out by the auras at any point? They weren't, but only because I was so mindful of how new an army this was, and that nobody had an experience with it or knew what to do with it, that I was telegraphing everything that sorcerer could do at any one time, because I didn't want anyone to feel that they'd been caught out because I'd brought the shiny new list. So anytime anyone moved anything, I was saying that is this speed, but could be this speed. If this guy comes over here, but he's out of range, and this could happen. But I could definitely see a time where people get caught out by it because the potential is there. And if I was at Masters playing you all, I wouldn't be telling you unless you asked me very specifically. I don't know what your feeling is on the sorcerer and what it feels like to play against.
I like the sorcerer. It's one of the ones where you look and you think, God, it could just do anything over the side of the board. There's nothing you can do about it. But you are paying a lot for the ability to have a sorcerer that can do that. And obviously I like the sorcerer, but my main issue is knowing the difference between which one's a Ravenous, which one's a Tinker, what does the sorcerer affect, and what doesn't it affect. Because I was looking at when I played you thinking, all right, units like Harvesters and Iron Beasts, those are Tinku units, are they? Like Aeronauts, they won't be affected. Edge Grenadiers aren't affected, I think.
No. So the Grenadiers and the Aeronauts aren't. The Iron Beasts and the Harvesters are.
Yeah. So I thought it'd have been kind of obvious that like mechy kind of techie units would not be affected. And the Sorcerer was more about for the actual Halflings, where there's a bulk of Halflings for it to affect. So I completely forgot about that until Harvesters come piling in with Brutal 3. No, I didn't realise that. Because that's just an assumption that I made based on the army being fairly new. So I think that kind of thing will catch people out. And it's one of the ones you need to keep an eye on because that's all keyword based.
Yeah. And this is an army that's definitely leaning into keywords much more than we've seen before.
Yeah, and keywords aren't on your easy army either.
No, that's a good point, actually. Maybe something we'll feedback to Greg. That actually maybe they need pushing through more because they're now becoming far more relevant than they were before.
There's a lot of keyword aura stuff going up.
Yeah, especially with the formations coming in, really leaning into keywords as well now. But yeah, I mean, as a player, I love the Sorcerer. So versatile, so many options of what you can do. This is the unit that gives you the biggest headache in the fact that you sit there going, I want all the things. And every single turn you go, well, I want Wild Charge there, and I really want Brutal here, but Rally's probably the best option. And I want everything. I went back and forth when I was on my list so many times on what is the magic number for Sorcerers. I think 2 is too many. There'll always be a time where you want 2 and you'll use 2, but I felt like I couldn't give up any of my other characters or any of my other stuff to get it in.
You could have another regiment of Star Wars or whatever instead. You can have, a number of bits and bobs.
But they're nice. What I do love about the Sorcerer, and I think if it was a slightly different list to the one I've got, if you had an abundance of Inspiring, which I think Halflings can very easily get themselves up to, not taking the Inspiring Talisman, and the fact that it can use its aura and then still cast a spell or do something, I really like that. So, like we'll see on your list where you've got somebody with the Trickster's Wand for Hex. The Sorcerer is an ideal Hex count carrier. It's an ideal, for things like the with Fireball getting a buff. It's ideal for carrying the Diadem of Dragonkind.
Definitely.
Things like that. So, and you can even give it loot for Banechant. I know it's hitting on 5s against most of your army, but it's a balance of whether it's still worth trying it. Because I know a lot of people worry about crushing strength in Halflings. I've not found it to be a problem yet, but it does worry a lot of people. And then the Engineer with the maybe ambitiously named Halfling long rifle, taking him all the way up to 24-inch range. But it's a long rifle for a Halfling. I really, really like him with the long rifle. It works out at about Lightning Bolt 5 equivalent, because obviously he's hitting on 3s with 3 shots and piercing 2, but then he's also taking all of the modifiers from a ranged attack. So
apart from move,
yes,
which is the important one.
Cover individual stealthy stacks more than you think. And yeah, it reaches a point where when you math it out, it's almost exactly the same as Lightning Bolt 5. But yeah, it's a really, really useful ability. That ability to reach out and touch things and just do a few pips of damage is very powerful. I think I over invested in my Engineer. The Wild Charge aura never came into it once, +1, and the Radiance of Life probably came in once or twice, but didn't make a massive difference. So yeah, I think next time I would strip out the upgrades, unless I was building a pure Tinker list. I'd drop those and put 25 points somewhere else.
I agree.
Because it was, I had the points. I wanted to bring all the toys, but I don't think I needed it. And then, finally, the Muster Captain on Winged Arrows with Relentless, and obviously, as I said, the Brew of Haste that's not on there. So that gives her a potential 25-inch charge range. Because she's got 22 inches as standard, and then she can be Wild Charge up to Wild Charge 3. I didn't use it once. There was never a good time to use it. I think it's a very, very unlikely situation it'll ever be relevant to use the turn 1 charge. But I liked the option to do the thing. But no, I never actually did the thing. I think there was one game where it was my game 6 actually, and I if I'd have got all 3, I could have charged a troop of tundra wolves, and if I'd have killed them, I'd have had a flank on his entire army. But to do that, I would have had to give up rally, and I was in the sights of Lightning Bolt 7 and a Mage's Conclave. And this is the thing, it's like on paper you can do all these things, but every time you do something like that, you are having to give up something else. And I think when a lot of people first looked at Halflings and said, "Oh my god, that's so OP," they weren't remembering that just because you have the potential to do all these things doesn't mean you can do all of them all the time, all at once. So yeah, I went for the safe option and rallied and hid in a corner rather than going for the fun option and going for wild charge 3 and going for 25-inch charge. But no, that was the list. I had a really, really good time using it. I got 3 wins, 2 losses and a draw with it. Yeah, and they were all really, really good, really close games. I think the games that I lost, I could easily have won. My opponent played brilliantly, but it wasn't that it wasn't the list fault. It was just, that was how the game went, and it played really well. At no point did I feel like I was on the back foot, massively because of the list. It was very different, and I had to sort of learn on the fly with lots of it. I'd only had 2 practice games before taking it to the event. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I think I'm kind of hooked on Halflings now. That these going to be my army for quite a while. But yeah, as an army to take to a tournament, I think it's a brilliant one that I'd recommend, and I'd recommend maybe if you're starting out with them, try something like this. Try taking a little bit of everything, because then you kind of get the idea of what flavour Halflings you might want to go down and sort of push into. So it was 16 units, which is unusual for me. I'm used to dancing around 12, just with the styles of armies that I normally take. 11 and 12 is usually 12 is usually a big army for me. And yeah, 25 unit strength, which isn't massive actually for a supposed cheaper army than mine. I think it's only 3 or 4 unit strength more than yours, Tom, which is probably a lot more elite than mine is. But yeah, no, really, really, really nice army, really good first introduction to Halflings. And yeah, we've got some questions, so I'm going to answer these, and then we're going to go on to your list, which is probably people are far more interested in than hearing me ramble about, my shiny Halflings. So, also includes for Halflings. I don't know. Have you got any time? I don't think there is necessarily an also include other than the sorcerer.
Yeah, and even then, for some people, sorcerer's an unknown, isn't it? It only does its 1 buff, and you're paying a decent amount for that. I don't know. I don't think they really have an actual auto include unit, to be honest. If anything, you'd probably say a harvester would fit with any version of any list, apart from maybe a cab list. But because they're such a narrow, got such a narrow frontage that you can just line them up outside of cover and just send them forward with a cheaper up as well. But honestly, no, they can do a bit of everything. They can do a cav list, you can do an infantry list, and you can do weird, wacky tinker lists. So maybe Edge Grenadiers, just as having a unit which is,
Yeah, I agree. I think the Edge Grenadiers are definitely a unit that fit into every list going because chaff always do. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the Grenadiers are the closest thing they've got to an auto include.
Yeah, because they're a proper, like you said yourself, they are less effective in terms of actual damage output than gargoyles, which people don't think of as a combat unit. But the Brutal D3 is just good for supporting other units going in, because you can do 1 damage, and then you roll your brutal, and if you get 3 on your brutal, well, that's effectively the Edge Grenadiers running in with 20 odd attacks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is not to be sneezed at. That's an effective flank. Even better if you do get your Grenadiers into the flank, And I like the idea of them running in with the little stun grenades.
Yeah, flash grenade and flash powder.
Yeah, which is where the brutal comes from, or something like that. And that's
I like it because some enemies will just look at you and go, "Well, what are you doing?" And then occasionally you'll roll the D3 on a 3, and basically enemies go, "Oh, the apocalypse has come." The little flying dudes have just exploded from a puff of smoke and, run you to the hills.
Yeah, you're getting like flying drop kicked by grenadiers.
And they've got big metal boots on, so you're
They
gonna feel it. I do like the fact that they're basically wearing exoskeleton, proper steam powered suits. They're very, very cool models. Even in mine do have the backwards wing because I didn't have time to wait for the replacement. There was no time to spare in my list. I was painting it at 4 a.m. the night before we set off.
Yeah, you're right.
But no, I agree. I think the Edge Grenadier is the closest to an auto include. I think other than that, the Sorcerer is probably the next one down. But I could build 5 lists now that I want to try out that don't include them.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't think they're necessarily an auto include at all.
No, I think your third choice there is probably the Muster Captain on our list because it's the only damaging flyer you get, and he's actually really good value for points.
Yeah, no, he is. He's probably, I think, takes the crown from the General Longwing Beast. As
he does. That Iron Resolve is just a little bit better.
And Spellwood.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is really very, very useful. Yeah, because it's Iron Resolve over very inspiring, and then the Spellwood's effectively free at that point. So yeah, it's a very nice unit, and then you can put Relentless on it as well. And it can be, it's ravenous, so it can be buffed.
Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree. But again, I don't think it would make it into every single list. Whereas I think the Grenadiers probably would.
No. Yeah.
So Jess asks, how do you mitigate the lower nerve value of halflings? I think for me, it's just make sure you think of your entire army as chaff. Don't worry too much about it, is probably the answer. They've got Rally from the Sorcerers, which can be helpful. And you've got things like the Headstrong Aura. As I said, Halfling's natural state was wavered. So accept that you're going to be wavered and put your Headstrong Aura where it really needs to be. But I was never lining up a single unit to charge a single target. I was lining up 3 units to charge 1 target every single time. So if you're wavering something, well, I've still got 2 left and a spare and maybe a bit of extra. But I think it's something you're just going to have to work around because that's how halflings stay the cost that they do because their nerve value is very low. 12-14 on your cavalry is scary low every single time. And one attack, 1 shot, or everything can waver them and does waver them. I don't know if you've got any other advice around low nerve units or.
No, like I said, it looks bad on paper because it's 12-14, but if you've got a sorcerer nearby, you're realistically looking at you going up to 13-15, which puts you in the normal bracket for nerve. And if you get lucky, then you're running around at elite level nerve and you're paying halfling points. So, Pride of the Shires as well is great for that. So there's those 2 you probably, they are your pick. But yeah, it's a tricky otherwise. That's the game that you play with halflings, isn't it?
And I think the trick is if you're not going to take those kind of units, make sure you've got redundancies. So don't think like what I mean. It's the same way I would have always done with my Order of the Green Lady or the Varanka or whatever. Is I have 1 very killing knight unit, and if it gets wavered, I'm relying on the Headstrong. Because I need this 1 unit to do that 1 thing. But with the halflings, it's not. It's I've got these 3 or 4 units, and I'm relying on whichever of these is left to do maybe a thing. So it's a different way of approaching it rather than the standard way.
I mean, weight of numbers and like just flooding the field with targets is always a viable tactic. Or I was talking about with the Prolam troop, like they're 9-11 with 3 defense of 3. Like they're going to die. They're going to get wavered. I've got loads of them though.
Yeah.
Target saturation is a valid tactic which halflings can do because they are cheap enough. Like Star Wars are fairly pricey. You can actually run that style of list and it'll work okay.
75 points a troop. You can bring 10 of them for 750 points.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad list. And you can put Aaron Cod or whatever in there and make them all nimble.
Yep.
Which is just fun. Cycliford, do you feel halflings lack damage output? How do people ask me this? How do you deal with no hammers in your armor? There are hammers in my armor. I've got plenty of them, thank you. No, I didn't at all feel the damage output. I thought I would. I really thought I was going to struggle with Bane Chant and only a bit of Thunderous and, not a lot of crushing. He just didn't come up at any point. And I played against the full gambit. I played practice game against Nick's Def 6 shield, siege breakers, and things like the brutal really helps, because brutal doesn't care what defense you are, and you're adding bits on. The harvesters are plenty fine. Crush 1 Thunder 1 is a really good, amount crushing strength, and you don't tend to be getting charged with them because you've got the stalwarts as your first wall, and you've got other bits in the way. Equally with the wild lancers, they're more often than not getting the charge because they've got speed 8 and nimble and the ability to be wild charge, so they're usually getting at least their Thunderous 1 and the melee 3. So it was more the plan for the fact that you don't have a lot of crushing and just throw a weight of dice instead and brutal and stack things on top of each other. But no, I know it's a big worry of a lot of people that there isn't the traditional style of melee 3, crushing 2, 18 attack units.
With Bane
Chant. But I didn't need that. And actually, what was really funny when people did have that is how wasted it was against me. Because you could have killed me with Crush 1 or no crush just as well as you did with your massively over the top unit. So no, I didn't feel that damage up at all, actually. I think if I was up there in terms of points killed. It wasn't like this was an army that won scenario and didn't kill anything. It killed plenty fine. And then I think we probably already covered Matt's question, but no, didn't manage any turn 1 charge with the winged arrows as much as I would have wanted to. And yeah, as I think I've said, the squishy, nimble light cav, they definitely were squishy. The trick was don't be upset when they don't get the charge you wanted. Have redundancies at all point. Don't ever get to a stage where you're relying on your cav to be alive, and that's your only plan, because they're probably going to be wavered. It's the honest truth. But no, that was the halflings. I don't know if you've got any other thoughts, Tom, on my halfling list or halflings in general, or halflings at Clash?
I'd probably echo in terms of Simon Clifford's question, in terms of how do you deal with halflings, just generally, so they don't play like other lists do. You're not going to get your archetypal, here is my cookie cutter hammer, which is going to go on my list. That doesn't exist. Closest you're going to get to really is like a Juggerhorde with brewer strength, and that's not a classical hammer. That's a weird, heavy, nimble, heavy cav horde thing, which might have managed, might be pretty fun. But yeah, you got to think of it as a different way of playing. So I think in the same way that you need to figure out how to get the most out of it, it is a well tested and well put together list. So it does work, and I think people are not going to be used to it. So you'll get some good mileage out of them initially, and then after that, as you master it, you'll continue to get that a little bit more out of them, that bit more. There's something that's just different is always a threat, I think, in Kings of War, because you get used to playing like you say, your large infantry, large cavalry hammer unit. And something completely off the wall is a threat that you're not practiced against.
No, I agree. I think it's good for the game. I think it's good for the game to have a different style of army out there that maybe you've got to think a bit differently about and play a bit differently against. And then the final question from Mr. Pretzel Twinkie himself. I totally forgot that I'm on the RC and know all the stuff coming in Clash 22 when I was putting this together, and thought, oh yeah, I'm allowed to spoil a few things and build hype art, and I completely forgot about all that. So I'd not even planned to talk about the new stuff that was coming for them. I mean, of course, Halflings are a kind of preview of what Clash might look like, because these are a Clash 22 army before everybody else got the buffs. We have made some changes. It'll come as a shock to nobody that Aeronauts are an irregular, and have gone up a bit in price and are losing brutal, and there's a few tweaks here and there to them. And there's some bits that have got better and some bits that have changed, and the feedback from the beta has been really good, actually. But there are a few bits that I am looking forward to of Halflings changing in with the Clash book coming out, and the first one for me is the formation. Because I'm not a big fan at the minute of poachers. I don't think they do the shooting well enough to be worth the extra cost. but the formation changes that quite considerably. So I really like Ally McSween. I think she's a really good character. I think her turning off magic items is a bit of a gimmick. But she's really good without the gimmick. She doesn't need it as a thing to do. But for me, what really makes this one here is the regiment of poachers. And I can see these now actually at range 4+ and inspiring self. These could replace the shooting wild runners in my list. Because they'd be better at shooting, but then they'd also have stealthy and scout and pathfinder and more unit strength and more nerve and just a slightly, so they'd have much less flexibility in terms of their speed and maneuverability, but would be almost better at everything else. So I can see me using the formation here. I'm definitely going to try it out. And then Rampage for Ally, which I think everyone's already seen, is the additional attacks against smaller targets. So Ally can really go at trying to take out some individuals by herself, or taking out some infantry troops and regiments by herself. Because 5+ D3 attacks is nothing to scoff at. Especially if she can steal their magic item when she does it, get brute strength. Quite nice. But no, I think the formation's a useful one. I think it adds something to maybe units that, while are perfectly fairly costed, and we'll come on to this in a minute with your list, but these mixed units, I think, often don't fare as well. So taking them up to range 4+ or giving them inspiring self, I think, is just enough actually to make them a really, really useful unit. But the other change, which I'm really looking forward to, is a new artifact. And this has actually already been spoiled, or at least half on, because I know that they showed a picture of it during Clash, but I can exclusively reveal the full name of it now. And this is the Gnome Glass Shield, which I'm a little biased because I wrote this. So it's my item, so of course I like it. But I think this on a Feastmaster is going to be excellent. I'm also really looking forward to this on like my Twilight Kin assassins and those kind of units. But I think the Feastmaster is a perfect unit for it, because it's 10 points, it's plus 2 defense until you suffer damage from any source at all. So Cloak of Death will blow it up in one go, and then you revert back to your standard defense. But that makes the Feastmaster 100 points. He's pure inspiring, because everything's pure inspiring now. He's got Scout, he's got 5 attacks. He's 11-13 nerve, but you've got to break that defense 6 first. And this, to me, really plays into what I was saying about the overlapping threats of Halflings. That if you're dealing with this Feastmaster, you're not dealing with the Wild Runners, and you're not dealing with the Aeronauts, or you're not dealing with something else, or you're not dealing with something else, or you're ignoring him, and you've got a 5-attack duelist character shooting at you the entire game and then running into your flanks and doing damage, and you might not break his defense 6, or his defense 6 is probably enough to save him when normally a die in one go. I think this is going to be a very powerful combination for the Feastmaster. I also really like him with wings, but I think the Glass Shield is probably going to be how I'm going to run him. And this, I think, to start with, is if I'm going to be dropping the Aeronauts, this is what's going to be going in first, is a glass shield wielding Feastmaster. And I've got to find a way of modelling a glass shield on a guy having 2 cleavers.
Yeah. No, I like the glass shield. I've looked at it for a couple of units before. It's one of the ones, especially with the Feastmaster. The thing that targets these kind of characters is lightning bolt. Because their nerve is low enough, their defense 4, they're individuals, so you don't want to shoot them with normal stuff. You'll pick a fireball, or you'll pick a lightning bolt and do 4 or 5 damage, and then he's wavered, and then you get to pick him up turn after. Like Glass Shield and Spellward just turns around and says, "Yeah, but do you really want to do that? Do you really want to waste your time? I mean, if you don't get on the first one, you have to put a second unit in, and at that point, you've wasted 2 units trying to crack that Glass Shield. And by the time you cracked it, you've done 1 damage probably. It's one of the things which just it causes a bit of an issue for traditional means of dealing with them.
Yeah, I really like it. As you said, it's not crazy, it's not over the top, but it's just enough of an issue, and it's going to ruin a Mind Screecher's day. And that makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
It does.
So that is the halflings. That for me, that this is one of the things I'm looking forward to is a few of these new artifacts. I think could be quite cool. And playing around, I think the halflings have got some of the best characters out there, really, and I'm really, there's a lot of them I keep looking at. Greedy Guts I keep looking at a lot.
Yeah, I like him.
I think he's very good. It's just the fact that it doesn't inspire. I keep having to be careful with the list I build him into. But I think he's really good as well. So, Tom, do you want to run us through your lovely fluffy Northern Alliance list?
Yeah, my Northern Alliance list, which is built out of whatever Mantic stuff you can make out of 3 boxes of the Shadow of War, the Vanguard set, a box of Frostfangs, and then I think, is that it? I think that's all you get. Yeah, that's all I've got in terms of Mantic stuff. Oh, I've also got Lord and Chimera, but I didn't use him because he's too expensive, which we will touch on later.
Yeah.
So so this is what I can make out of it. Oh, I've also got 2 hordes of human clansmen, but of course they're also too expensive to make the list. But moving on. 4 regiments of pack hunters. Now I was looking at these, and these work. They can work kind of single. You can run a single unit of pack hunters, and they'll be fine. You can run 2 or 3, and they'll be fine. Or you can go like just loads of them. You can go up to like 8 regiments, which I mucked around with at one point, and it's still got legs because because they've got the nice mix of strong shooting. Obviously, these have got javelins because I'm not mental. Running bows for some reason.
Oh
yeah.
I didn't put that on because I just thought it was assumed.
Yeah. But obviously, they're as good pretty much in combat as they are at shooting. And 12 shots with piercing 1 at range 4 and a steady aim is great. Obviously, they come in then in combat with Thunder 1. With 12 attacks, which is again solid. And when you use these guys together, when people try to get at them, they're not usually getting more than 1 or 2 units in, so you're going to open up flanks, and usually they don't tend to die in one go. Obviously, it's completely dependent on who you play and how they play. If you're running as Night Stalkers with this, then you can just pack your list up and go on because you'll lose a regiment of pack under the turn. So they're not very useful there because I'll never get in range to do anything. But yeah, other than that, really great. I tend to run these as a pack hunter, so I don't tend to run the pack hunters as a pack. So they'd all been deployed near each other. There'd be a Lord and Frostfang babysitting them in case anything is too close, and there'd be a Star Fox unit sat behind on intercept duty. Yeah, absolutely great unit. 155 points is very expensive because you're running into elite infantry kind of points costing at that. And you are defense 3, 13, 15. So anybody rocks up with a straight lightning bolt, you're in trouble. Thankfully, I dodged lightning bolt. Otherwise, it might not have been such a good day for pack hunters. They were great. Pretty much every game I played, to be fair.
I think when you first started using these, I underestimated their shooting. I knew the Thunderous was going to be good and the Pathfinder and all that sort of stuff, and I thought the shooting would be a nice to have. And then you unloaded 4 regiments into 1 target and just took it off sword. Because they'll do that. Because that's a lot of piercing 1 range 4 shots. Yeah,
I did the maths on running 4 was that when your enemy comes in close, most stuff they were going to run you is going to be defense 5, 15, 17. And if you've got the Foxes sat behind, Foxes running up in front, they pin down one of the 2 units that were going to get to you. Or you've got Lord and Frostfang keeping another unit back. And then you walk forward your pack hunters, 4 regiments of them, like usually 3 of them will be uncovered, 1 of them might be covered. But that's doing about 12 damage. 6 hits, 3 damage on a defense 5 unit. So you're running up to 12 damage, which is effectively going to kill. Or you spike one way or the other, you probably get a waiver at the very least. So that's the maths on why you run, why I was running 4. And also, they unlock at the moment because of the clock packer, which will become official in the new book. Other than that, they're not getting anything new. They're just a really nice solid hybrid unit, of which they're quite unique as well. So good fun.
No.
After sorry, are you gonna say anything?
No, I was gonna say I don't like them. I don't like playing against them. But they're a really solid unit, and I think they're one of those units where you can't be too upset playing against them because you can see their downsides. You can see the cost, you can see the low defense. I say low nerve. I've just played a tournament with halflings. These guys have got luxurious nerve. But it's one of those, there's some units where you look at them, you think, well, where is the downside to that? There's no risk reward there. Pack hunters are not that. It's I don't think you'd be too salty playing against them.
No, they've got massive risks, and you've got to be very careful with playing them because they're actually, they are still slow. But no, I like them. They're a fun, different unit that you don't see many of. Then I've got 3 regiments of snow foxes because obviously, again,
go on. Why obviously? I know why obviously, but why obviously?
Yeah, because they are one of, if not the best. No, they're in the top 3 for best chaff units in the game. And I needed 3 because my list is horrendously slow without them. The best thing I've got is speed 7. My army is slow, especially when you're trying to play competitively at top level. Speed 8 is the minimum that I really need. Well, for a chaff unit to be able to jump through my own units and go protect them, because obviously they are. One damage scares them. It's quite hard to properly hide them if people have got lightning bolt as well. But fortunately, my entire army hates lightning bolts, so you can only lightning bolt so much of my stuff.
Take your pick,
yeah. It's target saturation. But they were just great. If I need to pin down a unit, I managed to pin down aeronauts with them. I managed to pin down a dragon type version of whatever it is that needed to hit to stop it from flying over.
Yeah, because for some reason they have 10 attacks.
Yeah, do you know why that is?
No.
I was thinking about it and I figured it out. Most swarms have 9 attacks, don't they?
Oh yeah, and they've got a snow fox.
Yes, they do. They've got the snow fox built in, that's why.
I like it. That's true.
Yeah. See,
all of a sudden, I'm no longer annoyed. Except I now want to be called snow foxes.
Yeah. I was thinking about it today. It's like, that makes good thematic sense. I like it. But they're a really good unit. One of them sits with the pack hunters. One of them sits with the snow trolls, and the other one goes depending on whatever the scenario needs to help out if one of the foxes needs to go die early. Yeah, good fun. Then I've got 2 hordes snow trolls with Wrath and Dwarven Ale. So again, I took these because I need to make a Mantic army, and I've got loads of snow trolls. And snow trolls are pretty good. They are expensive. You are paying a premium over normal trolls, but you do get the things that you need to make trolls a little bit better in that. So obviously the extra nerve you get pushing to 15, 18. And you see the theme with Talon Standard, that's Rally 1. So you can push them up to 16, 19. And if you've got Wrath and Dwarven Ale, they've got Fury and Headstrong, which keeps them in long enough that their region really does work. And these were great. These were great all tournament. If I'd have come up against a trash list, if I come up against Ratkin or if I come up against Goblins, these would have been next to useless because they don't kill enough. Wherever they hit tends to stay hit because they've got vicious, but it's not got a proper way of attacks, and you can't afford to be double charging snow trolls into the same unit. So excellent. Yeah, I think they did really good work for me in this. But if I was running my favoured Northern Alliance list, I wouldn't have any of these at all. They'd be Huskarls with Brewer Sharpness because they are an actual hammer. Yeah, snow trolls aren't a hammer. They're not really an anvil. My only other choice instead of these was Human Clansmen, who were more expensive and pretty much the same in combat ability. Not quite the same in terms of survivability because of the regen. And then more expensive, bigger base size, slower, and you're just worse in every way. So they had to be snow trolls, and also they look. Actually, no, my Human Clansmen actually look really good. I'm still kind of good that they're useless. Maybe not. Yeah, snow trolls are good. I think it's a Northern Alliance thing. If you're looking at competing, all the units compete for the same slot rather than having a bit more gradation in terms of what they do. So yeah, that's why I went snow trolls rather than anything else, because Mantic models from what I've got and Human Clansmen kind of suck. So then I have a Thane on Frostfang with Snow Fox and Trickster's Wand. This was because, right, in fact, I'll cover the Snow Troll Prime at the same time and why I've got them in. So the Snow Troll Prime's also got Stay in Stone, and he supports obviously the trolls, and it works in terms of the Lords of Frostfang can bugger off. The Thane doesn't have to be there to help them. He can be with the pack hunters, and they've got their own inspiring source. And obviously, a little 50mm character like him's a nightmare. Same with the Thane on Frostfang. They don't have the combat output that Lord on Frostfang does, but you don't always need the combat output of a Lord and Frostfang. Quite often, them two would stay behind and they'd shimmy onto a flank or something and just make sure that you couldn't afford to come forward, while the Lords and Frostfang were doing heavy lifting elsewhere. So both of these were great just for little nimble charges, sneaking out here or there. And obviously, they both got a decent amount of nerve. That Snow Troll Prime with the Staying Stone is 14-16, and with the Thane with Talent Standard is 15-17. And for a 125 point piece, if you lose him, that's really good recyclable chaff because he's got that region just to stay in there a bit longer. So he was class for sitting in the middle of the lines and adding a bit of extra combat support, because for some reason he was probably he rolled better than everything else in my list. Like, I could count on nearly 2 hands the amount of time he'd hit and win with everything. It was ridiculous. But I mean, he hits some 3s and he's got Vicious on his follow-up attack, so he can do that. And then the thing on Frostfang with the Trickster's Wand, this was 15 points left, which I didn't know what to do with. I thought Brutal, and I thought I'll put 5 points on a healing brew or something like that. But I went, you know what? I really, really, really hate Lightning Bolt. I hate it so much. And I also hate Surge Casters because I don't have in this list anything capable of stopping a Surge. I don't have the flyers to jump over in the backlines. I don't have the individuals to go after them. I have no means of dealing with any of that. So I thought, you know what? Might be useful. And I don't know if I can say or not. Hex is changing.
Okay. Yeah. So we can. Yeah. So Hex is changing to be able to target everything now.
Yep. Great. So spellcaster 0, 1, 2, 3, anything, he's going to get hexed.
Which I think is going to be very powerful, and we'll make Hex be seen a lot more often. So you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Cast.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Obviously, this was actually a really good choice on my list because it did a couple of key moments where it just caused people problems, or it caused them a headache, and it stopped them from taking a risk-free surge or a risk-free shot, which I think I'll go through our games in a little, like a brief order, and I'll cover where it was useful there. Right, so the next one up is a Thane on foot, Inspiring Talisman, Talent Standard. Again, this is because if the Lords have to bugger off, I've got an Inspiring unit in the backline, it'll do everything. And that rally is so good, especially like on the Trolls, pushing out to 19 nerve with Wave of Mitigation. It just means they actually can be an anvil, especially when you got regen. The moment you roll 1 lot of regen, you've probably already beaten your human clansmen in terms of effectiveness, and then you're just betting combat, smaller base size, all the other wonderful stuff. And again, Pack Hunters, the amount of times people are one shot on wavering Pack Hunters because of him it happened enough to be notable. And you think, obviously, he's about 90 odd points, isn't he? And he just does a little bit of everything, so that when people are trying to get into your backlines, it's like, but that bloody Thane, how many attacks has he got? He's got 1 on it. No, it's not standard bearer, mate. He's a hero character. He can fight. Adding 1 into a combat, sitting down an ice elemental horse, sitting down a flyer, or stopping some edge grenadiers jumping in my backlines. He was really useful, actually. For what is usually a completely useless character in most lists is the archetype of the 3-attack non-mounted individual. But yeah, can't complain. It's nice. And then obviously the best thing in the list, 10 points undercosted a piece, obviously, is the Lords and Frostfang. Yeah, I agree. 10 points. But he's undercosted because, and everyone takes 3 of them because Northern Lions would not be a competitive list without them. I think them and Snow Foxes, Snow Foxes probably an 85 point unit maybe. But Lords and Frostfang are the thing that makes Northern Lions worth actually looking at. If you didn't have them, they'd be a crap list. So with that in mind, let's go through what I've got. Obviously, all Snow Foxes pushing to 9 attacks. 2 of them with slashing and crushing because it's mandatory, so they're effectively running at 10 attacks apiece. And these are the workhorse. They do everything. They bring the crushing that you need. They bring the threat projection that you need. And it's not quite enough, but it is sizable nevertheless. That you bring in 15 inches, because anybody who's flying, they're going to have to move into range, and then they're going to have to you can move back, you can do any sort of build nimble shenanigans to get yourself covered from a charge, which I did all the time. I was constantly using impassable terrain to anchor their flanks, to move up first turn, nimble, march 14 inches, and be like, right, cool, you can't do anything about me. I can nimble charge anything I like. What are you going to do about it? Also, I've got Shredder, so I don't really care. And so often they were just an absolute nightmare for opponents, especially with 3. You reach a critical mass with 3 of them, and then obviously the Snow Troll Prime and the Thane on Frostbank. That something's going to go where it wants to go, and there's nothing you can really do about it. If you start to really get in amongst it, I'm going to open up 2 or 3 different angles that these 50mm nimble guys will be able to get into, and I've got a lot of them to do it. So, everybody knows Lords of Frostbank, they are probably, if you had the top 3 units in the game, they'd be in there.
Yeah.
So. Which is,
But as you say, I mean, I'm not going to pretend they're not ridiculous. They're what I had 2 of them in the list that I won 4-foot snake with for the moment of Varangur. But you said it there. It's that critical mass, actually, isn't it? That the Lords on Frostfang will not win you the game by themselves. But what I found from playing against your list was you can deal with 1 and 2, but then you can't deal with the Prime and you can't deal with the Third. And actually, if you go this way, you're going to get shot then charged by these pack hunters, and it's you can't stop them. You can never stop them all. There's too many nimble 50mm bases, which is such a maneuverable, such a flexible base size.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this list has to do. I don't have a hammer. None of those units are actual hammer units. The trolls definitely aren't, and they're the closest thing to it. The pack hunters, if they don't stop you, they are in trouble. So you need the Lords on Frostbank to do anything to hold this army together. And the original version of this list had a Cavern Dweller and a Lord and Chimera in. And I just found that it was just such a small army, and it wasn't really like you were just hoping the Lords and Frostbank and the Chimera could do the work. And if someone could, shut that Chimera down, you're 320 points down, because that is one expensive motherfucker. Just being able to go up to 15 units, being able to take a loss here or there, and not having a sizable amount of your army gone early game is just massive. So not taking Lord and Chimera, putting in the Snow Troll Prime and the Thane, who were cheaper than the Chimera, have pretty much the same damage output. Obviously, you're bringing in 2 lots of unit strength, which is 50mm nimble, and doing lots of little evil little shenanigans was a better choice than the Lord and Chimera with change to spare, which is why I went for them. Which is obviously they're not an archetypal thing you see in the Northern Alliance list. Because Snow Troll Primes, you need to take Snow Trolls, and obviously the Thane is just a worse Frostfang. But obviously these 2 are going to be a lot better, so you might see a couple more of them in the new book, because they will become play inspiring, and then they will be able to do their job and have a place, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean the Prime especially, I think is going to be to see a lot more of.
Yeah, wonderful little annoying 50mm cheap enough guy who's not a lot on Frostbank.
Very nice. So 15 total drops, still a very healthy number of drops for a fairly elite armor. And 22 unit strength again, not a bad amount of unit strength.
No, obviously there's so many single. The important thing is it's 14 scoring units. Unit strength I don't think is actually important as scoring units. Having a decent amount of unit strength spread out across the list. If you've got 3 unit strength hordes and they're gone, and that makes up the majority unit strength, well then there you go. But if I've got it spread out across all over the shop, then it's more able to get to where it needs to be, especially in my army's small frontages. It's lots of regiments and it's lots of 50mm bases. I think going over the top to get unit strength in isn't actually as useful as people think it is. Scoring units that can hold their own or be where they need to be are more important.
But no. I see. What were your questions then? So I think you mentioned it, but Jess asks, how do you get the most out of pack hunters? And I'll put Dave's together as well at the same time, because how do you use key units that have got a dual role, like rangers, pack hunters, glade stalkers, those kind of things that are pricey but fragile? How do you get the value out of them?
Yeah, I think so. For me, getting the most out of the Northern Alliance ones, the pack hunters work best when they're used in tandem. Like if you're running an ice element list with 3 of them, like 2 pack hunters just helps push things a little bit further over the edge. And these, in this case, how I ran them as a block. So I ran 4 pack hunter regiments right next to each other. So anything coming at them was looking at. Well, if you get into combat with me, I'm probably going to be in cover. So you're going to be hindered coming in. So you're probably not breaking me. I've got rally nearby. And as soon as you do that, I'm opening up flanks. So I've got Lords and Frostfang babysitting. So anything gets too close has got to deal with, him. And if you're taking a flank from Lord and Frostfang, you're probably going to die. Most things in the game do. Yeah. So you can do that, and you're affected because my arm is so slow. Having those javelins, which are steady aim and range 4 with piercing, you've got a 17-inch like little zone of control. So you're doing a mini volley gun kind of tactic of picking out a 17-inch block and going, you probably don't want to walk in here, which helps since your arm is so slow to claim that little bit of board space that you need. So yeah, and I'd like to point as well for them, dual role units are tricky. Dwarven Rangers are complete. They're just not pack hunters. They are similar in quite a few ways, but you wouldn't run 4 redness next to each other. I don't think you could run 1 or 2 with each other, but they are a bit more expensive. And you've got a bit of extra range where you don't need to worry about, like with pack hunters, where dwarf rangers get to shoot and not get shot back. They get to shoot and not get charged immediately. If pack hunters are shooting, they're probably also able to be charged. So you need to be really making sure you make those shots count. Otherwise, you're not going to get to use them. Dwarf rangers don't have that problem. But dwarf rangers have the ability to scout into terrain, sit in there, buff up their keep that defense going, keep their better nerve and better defense than the pack hunters relevant. Whereas pack hunters are relying on stealthy. They're relying on being in cover. Otherwise, they will die. And they are too expensive for you to lose top of turn 1. Yeah, I think that's probably all I've really got to say. Stuff like Gladestalkers are obviously they're different as well because they've got even more range, and they're getting a buff in themselves as well. So pack hunters are a weird hybrid unit. They don't play like I don't think any other hybrid unit does. They're more like an infantry version of ice elementals or boomers or whatever. Because
I think boomers is a good comparison, isn't it? Of as you say, they're a much more fragile version of boomers.
Yeah,
but 100 points cheaper.
Yeah. And my God, they feel 100 points cheaper. Yeah.
So Matt G asks, what could convince you to take a Chimera, Cavern Dweller, or Snow Troll Prime over the Lord and Frostfang?
Nothing.
Remove the Lord and Frostfang from the list.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't play Northern Lions probably because it'd be a crap list. No, Chimera, he's all right. It's just the problem with Chimera, he is so expensive, and Northern Lion stuff is already expensive. Everything's really expensive, and you're not quite like stuff like Frostfang Cavalry. 260 odd points or something base for 15, 17. They're not very quick. They're not actually that hitty. They've not got any wave of mitigation built in, and it's a lot of points for something which is so vulnerable. And a lot of the Northern Lion stuff is in that weird position where they're kind of vulnerable, but they're also very expensive. Like pack hunters 155 points a piece. And the Chimera just makes that problem even worse. He's useful to take, and he's always going to have a spot because you have nothing else in your list that can do anything like a dragon can. Like Snow, the Lord of Frostfang is not a dragon. People say, "Oh, it's just another dragon for 100 points." It's not. Lord of Frostfang has to obey the rules. Chimeras get to fly all over the board, do every one. They've got 3 more movement on top of them. 3 speed on top of them, and speed 20 is vastly different to speed 7 because speed 7 cannot stop a flyer. You have to use a second unit, otherwise that flyer will get out of your line of sight. There's nothing you can do about it. A Chimera can do that job, a Lord of Frostfang cannot do it. So it does have a place, he just is too expensive. And I don't like the fact that the Lord and Chimera is elite for no reason, whereas the other Lords aren't. I'd prefer the Lord and Chimera because the Chimera has 3 heads to have like 12 attacks, which is mathematically pretty much the exact same. It doesn't then just look like a knockoff Elf Dragon, which would be interesting, There's no reason why we can't have a bit of differentiation. So something like that would make me take Chimera. And I've got one which is painted up and looks lovely, which turns out is a massive factor in determining what you take to an event these days. Now that this is my hobby army, something which looks pretty is actually quite important to me. Cavern Dweller, I have a beautiful Cavern Dweller model.
You do?
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's not Mantic, I've got it.
Yeah, that was the other reason why he's not in the list. The Cavern Dweller again, random amount of attacks, only a bit more nerve than a Lord of Frostfang. You can't give him an item. He isn't going to inspire anything. He's fun, but is just not a Lord on Frostfang. And I've used them before. And the problem with Northern Alliance is you don't get weight of attacks. You know, you're not bringing in a human berserker horde. Nothing's going to do that. And the Cavern Dweller just compounds on that. It's just another thing which has a small amount of elite attacks, and so much stuff already does that. Northern Alliance struggles to deal with your weight of numbers already, and compounding on that with the Cavern Dweller, especially if I'm running Snow Trolls, which I was before, and I was going into normal blind units and still not breaking them because I had so few attacks, you know. So that is my issue with the Cavern Dweller, despite the fact I think he is a cool and unique monster, and my model for it is amazing, and I love it. And then Snow Troll Prime, I do use him. He would probably get used a little bit more now because you don't have to sit with trolls. The problem I found with Northern Alliance as well, which I think we tried to get at, and I think we are getting at, is units. There's so much unit choice in terms of ice elementals. With Ice Queens, you've got Ice Naiads. Yeah, there's a whole little gamut of different units which are slightly different, do all these little things, and they work well together. But these lists of pigeonhole Snow Trolls have to run with a prime, really. You don't have to, but it'd be nice if Snow Trolls were frostbound, so you could run an Ice Queen with something other than ice elementals. Because if you're running an Ice Queen, you have to take elementals, because otherwise the Ice Queen's a massive waste of points. She's already too expensive. And you're just compounding on that if you're not running ice elementals. Because even with Ice Naiads, Icy Breath is mostly useless on her, 99% of the time. So you take Surge for the ice elementals. And very inspiring Frostbound means that it's absolutely useless for the rest of your army if your army is not entirely Frostbound. So stuff like that, which hopefully is going away in some form or the other, means that Snow Troll Prime becomes a more attractive prospect, because he can sit there with your infantry and do that job of sitting just behind the line, being completely untouchable by most units, and then just be sitting there and going, right, if you charge anything, I'm taking a flank. And actually, I hit like a truck in the flank. I hit harder than a dragon because I've got vicious. And they're cheap as well. You know, these guys are hopefully going to start competing. As now, you'd take the Order of Frostfang because it's what makes Northern Alliance viable and fun to play, rather than slow, completely out of options when dealing with Night Stalkers. No idea how to deal with war engines. Like, you just don't have an answer to so many things. Having Lords of Frostfang, which are cheap enough, yeah, a bit busted. Nobody's gonna lie and say they're not. But just having the Lords of Frostfang means you can actually, compete on some level. You got your Lightning Bolt, which I have no answer to. However, I have 3 Lords of Frostfang. Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, it's Lightning Bolt.
Yeah. It's 2 regiments of Wild Runners.
Yeah, exactly. That did it.
2 turns, it's wavered. All right, great. That Lord of Frostfang's dead.
Yeah, I'm not sorry.
Yeah, I think people just leave Lord of Frostfang on thinking they can't do much about it, and a little bit of shooting actually
it's still
really
only a Death 5, 15, 17.
Yeah, which is the normal thing that you aim to kill by shooting.
Yeah. So it should be. If you're not planning to kill that, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, that is the most important bit of the list.
Yeah. And so Mode asks, and you've already touched on it, but what sort of list would you rather not face or have trouble dealing with, and why?
Night Stalkers, because they are built to kill Northern Alliance. I think my League of Rordia list, which I ran at London GT, would annihilate this, because it's got quality of shooting in terms of 3 volley guns and a bit of mounted scout shooting, which will ruin Snow Troll's days, because you will be wavered and then you will die. And then it's also got 18 Lightning Bolt on flyers, which are completely untouchable by the Northern Alliance. So they get to delete a pack hunter regiment a turn for nothing being able to stop them. So my list would fall apart, because I'd have to run forward, and then the volley guns would kill me. And then if I do get close enough, the Honor Guard and the Knights are as quick or faster than everything else in my army, and will one-shot everything in my army. So if I played my own League of Rordia list, I would lose handily, because I have no answer to it. And obviously stuff like that, so things with a decent amount of shooting they can bring to bear. If you can get rid of a Lord of Frostfang early on, I'm in trouble. If you've got things which have the way of attacks to waver a pack hunter regiment turn 1, to put a unit of trolls in danger, because if I lose a troll unit, I'm also pretty much screwed, because my main line is relying on them to hold, and if I've lost one, I'm probably about to lose another, and then I have no proper units lying around, which is a horrific thing to come back from. Flying individuals, mounted individuals, anything like that, because they will waltz through pack hunters, sit there, and they will kill them at their own leisure, because without Thunderous, pack hunters are not a threat, and I cannot set up that multiple overlaying flanking maneuvers that the pack hunters like to do. And just by chance, I didn't play against any of that at Clash of Kings, which is probably why I won. To be fair, my last game against Rob Phipps with his Northern Lions turned out to be actually quite a bad matchup for me. So he nearly got it, and he probably should have beaten me, to be fair. I guess we'll touch on that when we get to the game itself. But
well, I was going to say,
those kind of lists are a nightmare.
I'm conscious of time, and we've been going about 90 minutes now.
Yeah.
And so I think rather than kind of running through each game, I suppose, are there any kind of highlights that jumped out where your list particularly changed the course of the game, do you think, or this list being different to your standard lists?
Yeah, so I'll touch on quick things from like each game, and then we'll just move on. I think you've got a couple of pictures, so if you throw a picture up, I'll say game one, this happened, this happened, we'll go from there. So yeah, game one I was playing Andy Land. He had a big dragon, and obviously not having anything to deal with that, I had to use a pack hunter Frostfang mix to hold the dragon back for most of the game. I ran my pack hunters as a solid right wing, and the Laws and Frostfang were an absolute nightmare. Trickster's one did its job. A key point, he had a mage priest, and he had a fire elemental which he was looking to surge into a Frostfang. And I'd hex the mage priest, and he thought it's probably worth a shot anyway. And he did it. He needed 7 out of 8 on elite, and he got 6, which did 12 damage to the mage priest. At which point, the pack on a unit walked around the building. I went, sweet. Pinged him for 2 damage and killed his inspiring mage priest, the core of his army, like turn 2. Which was great because it just set up things to cascade from there. So that was great. That was Hex doing its job. That was pack hunter's been a nightmare, and I was using the Frostfang and the pack hunters to help pin the dragon back, because you can't do it alone. That was an interesting game as well, because I rolled 3 double ones. Which were actual double one rolls. I got an ancient unit up to about 16 damage, so I'm not quite devastated. Double one it, which then meant that the ancients, which I got to 14 or 15 damage on the second roll, because the ancients survived double one, they also survived on a double one. And then I got a Kaisenov Raptor unit, the heavy cav that they have with Lord and Frostfang, double one that, and took about 11 damage in return. And yeah, that was a what would have been a very easy game turned into quite a scary fight, as all those double ones came out in the same turn, made me go, oh no. But no, that was good. It was a really good game, really well played, and it was a great opponent. Game 2, I played Tom King with his Empire Dust. Again, this was a big scrum in the middle. He's Empire Dust, so that's what they want to do. They want to be a nice compact mob, and I want to be able to shoot things like that. So I had 2 Frostfangs running around the flank. And I had a wall of pack hunters just unloading, and it featured actually Adel Shobik being dragged down by pack hunters. I used a lot of nimble Frostfang shenanigans and snow foxes to pin units, and he created a real traffic jam by being so close to each other that the pack hunters were just at will throwing javelins into rear lines from the hill that they were stood on. And they eventually, because he had to do it to get units out of the way, had to overrun the Adel Shobik after killing a pack hunter regiment, which meant that 2 more were in his flank, and the pack hunters off the hill took out the Adel Shobik, and I was just like, oh yes, you absolute heroes. 48 Thunderous 2 attacks will do it.
I'm going to say, people say the idol's unkillable until you find a situation like that.
You throw about 50 javelins at the bug and then come off the hill with him, you might get him.
That'll do it.
Yeah, no, that was a good game. He was a good guy as well. First time playing, he come up from Ireland actually as well.
And I think you can watch him play on. He was on stream on game 1.
Yeah.
So
this is an interesting Empire Dust list. I also featured double one on Slave Guardians this time, which cost me like 400 points. Yeah, I ended up losing a Snow Trolley for the unit because of the double ones on Slave Guardian Horde, which kind of sucked. But we continued because it got worse from there. Game 3, I was playing Richard Lake King's Undead. And this was another one where we were quite angsty around each other. Dad, I'm very quick. I'm not very quick. I think he underestimated how much pack on a shooting can hurt, as 4 of them rocked up and just deleted a wraith troop. He wasn't expecting that. And on the left flank, a snow troll horde came off into a white horde, and I was hindered. I did 9 damage anyway, which is pretty good. And the Lord of Frostbank sat his vampire down with a waver, and it was just one of the ones like, right, I'm going to lose the entire flank now, which is what proceeded to happen. And then immediately after, snow trolls do a load of damage, put the whites up to +1, and of course I roll it. It was just like, oh no, never mind. I thought I got some good dice. No, never mind, it's gone. But that was a really good fight. Again, lots of snow trolls. Snow trolls just being an absolute beast in the middle. Lords and Frostfang just picking things up. And because of the +1, I'd been a bit. I can't think of what the word is for the life of me now. They'd been a bit cheeky and thought, I'll be all right. I won't worry about +1. I've just killed his vampire lord. And over on my Lord and Frostfang. And it meant that the whites could then turn around for free, surge into the rear of my Lord and Frostfang and kill him for nothing because of the +1. I'm like, that's what you get. That's what you get. That's fair. That's my fault. I deserve this. So that's my 5th +1 in game 3, of which all of them been +1 rolls, and all of them on actual proper hammer units. So game 4, this will happen again. I played Steve Pearson this time. Great guy. And this was on stream as well, so go watch it. This was a really good game. I actually played really well. We'd been out drinking all day and all night. We'd finished at 3 o'clock by the time we got in. And I think I was still drunk. The hangover hadn't hit yet.
We'd not been asleep long enough for the hangover to hit in by that point.
No, it hit me in game 5. But this was another one. I did quite similarly. He used his screen units too early. My Lord and Frostbank jumped in, and I just started creating so many holes in his lines with javelins, and with the low 50 mil nimble characters. I was just getting flanks and rears everywhere. As his middle was the last thing standing, and I was just completely encircling him. My javelins came up and did just absolutely annihilate the Corsair unit in one turn and +1'd it. Which kind of sucked. And then obviously I did the same thing again to an ancient unit, +1 them as well. So I'm up to 6 +1s. No, 6, 5, 6, 7. I'm onto a lot of +1s now. All of them being +1 units. I'm feeling a little bit hard done by that. But I can't complain because that game was so well played that I had enough redundancy in that the +1s weren't that much of an issue, which is a bit of how you're playing and looking, expecting for the +1 rather than just assuming what happened is important. Game 5, I played Danky with his aeronaut spam, like 8 aeronauts, 4 grenadiers, 3 brave units, and then a couple of characters to mix. And I looked at this and I went, if I try and sit back, if I let it come at me, I'm screwed because it's quicker, as quick or quicker than everything I've got. So I've got to pick a part of the battlefield to go kill and dig them away out from there, which is what I did. I moved forward. I took the pass while I used it to anchor my flanks on my Lords and Frostfang and just got right in his face immediately. I put my Snow Foxes out there as a bit of a bait to get his edge grenadiers to come out early, which they did. And at that point where he did that, all the aeronauts came forward. They walked into range of my javelins, and I think Dan wasn't really expecting 3 regiments for them to one-shot an aeronaut regiment in one go. But 9 damage on average, they can do that. And I had a 4 spare if I needed it. It turned out I'd read about 12. Didn't need it, and I used the last one to pick up an edge grenadier unit for free. And I just kept doing that. I kept picking aeronauts and putting a Lord and Frostfang into them, thinking, good shot at wavering you. If I don't waver you, that's fine. I can take the counter and I'll kill you. I was just doing that everywhere. So I cleared his centre. Turn 5, actually, so that the centre was gone. It gave me enough time to look at the flanks and deal with everything there. And game 5, it was game over. He couldn't physically stop me. So turn 5, not game 5. That was an interesting game, but I've never played against before. I think if I hadn't played it like that and I let it come to me, or if he'd got turn 1, I might have not been able to do anything about it. Because it doesn't give you an option. It's a skill sponge kind of list. It's just, can you deal with it? No, all right, then cool. I guess that's game. So it's like playing an artillery spam army. If you don't have an answer to it and it just rolls what it wants, then there's nothing you can do about it. Which kind of takes it a bit away from what you can do to play against it. But end of the day, it was a pretty good game actually. I played it pretty well. I was getting forgetful and sloppy towards the end because I was hungover at the setting, the lack of sleep at setting.
And that moves on to game 6 against Rob Fitz for all the marbles on game 1. Got table 1 of the stream. I played shocking for the first 3 turns. I was crap. I didn't go into it with a plan. I took my somewhat standard setup of snow trolls in the middle with the prime dead by their 4 regiments of pack hunters, and then lo and behold, immediately stealthy and cover doesn't matter to his bolt throwers. He did a bit of damage. The Ice King hunters did a bit more damage, and then he's got 10 twice to pick up a pack hunter regiment turn 1. I'm like, oh yeah, he's got enough shoot to do that. He was a bit lucky, but he could do it. And what I usually do in these situations is I let them spread damage around, so units will move up to cover it so they can't get shot again. And by doing that, I kind of cycle the damage around, so when things start to go into combat, shooting starts to happen, I've got the weight of shots to really make it count still, rather than having lost 2 units on the way. I've got 4 damage units or whatever is usually what I try to do. You'll know, Elliot, from playing me, I like to spread damage around rather than letting it focus in one place. And this was another one where I was outranged slightly. Stuff is slightly quicker than me, and I don't have an answer to the surge. And these Ice King hunters were a pain in the ass because they were reliably good shooting, as were his bolt throwers. I don't think they ever didn't deliver like 2 hits a turn. So I think by turn 3, I'd just been sloppy. I had less snow trolls in a charge range, which they didn't need to be in. And they were there because I'd forgotten about Frozen, which had pushed me out of range with his ice elementals, because I thought I was in. I mucked around with them, thought, I can't do anything with them. I thought I left them out, so they didn't need to be inspired, which let the Frostfang cavalry charge them. Needed, a 10 on average, got a 9. And then needed 9 to kill the inspired, and got it. And then he's got Frostfang in the middle of the board, can do whatever they like and get it like turn 3. I'm like, oh God, no, because it's all my own fault because I've been crap the entire game. But I picked up from there. I found some sneaky areas to get Frostfangs into, which were what were left because most of them got shot off. And my pack hunters came good to put a bit of shots out there, pick up all these little stray units that are lying around all over the place. And again, I kind of use my big scary units, my Lords of Frostfang, as bait to try and pull the ice elementals away, to try and pull the Frostfangs away and keep the Lords out, which worked because I had no right to win that game. Robert outplayed me for the first 3 turns. I think he thought he couldn't ignore my units on the flanks, and he went after them, which pulled him away from the middle. And lo and behold, we both thought for some reason I went first when I didn't. So when I got to my turn 5, we went, all right, game's over. I rolled it. There wasn't a turn 6, which is fine because I didn't actually have a turn. I never actually had a turn 6, let alone a turn 7. And that was game there. If I'd have got one more turn, and if I'd have realised that I was actually playing second, I'd have probably lost anyway, because the ice animals would have picked up another pack hunter unit, because, like, as pack hunters hate, something like ice animals with their icy breath, 18 shots, hits on 4s, ignore my stealthy, you're wounding on 2s, my defense is crap, my nerve is crap, and they just pick them up, and there's nothing I could do about it. But as it was, the game ended there somewhat prematurely, which is good for me, I guess, because a turn 7 would have screwed me. Even better because I would have lost out on the turn entirely because we thought I went first. And that was just enough to get me over the line. I had a little bit more unit strength than him at the end, which gave me the tournament overall. So not my finest win for the finale, but it got me over the line. I played the scenario. I picked up my gaming. I picked up and I played better in game. In turn 4, 5, and 6. And I used my flanking units to try and pull him away, to try and create a threat that he had to turn to, which pulled them away to give me the unit strength in the middle. So, usually my tactic is go kill things. And when I can't do that because my army is slow and doesn't like getting shot at, I turn to playing scenario, and it paid off for me.
Very good. I gotta say, it was unusual to see 2 Northern Alliance armies duking it out on the top table for 6 games.
Yeah.
For an army that's, I wouldn't consider a softer army, but it's usually not considered top tier, and they were both quite different lists as well.
Yeah, it caught me out a lot with little Frozen bits here and there. I forgot Frozen like maybe 3 or 4 times because I never used it. But because I think it's a bit crap, to be honest, but it kept catching me out. Hex was great as well, because we figured out that if you hex a guy with Blizzard, we have no idea what happens. So judgment calls were made, and it turns out the hex works for every hit after your blast. And I think that is the actual official line on it.
Yeah.
So it turned what would otherwise be him chancing a blizzard to be him not casting blizzard at all, which saved me the possibility of losing a pack on a unit otherwise, which was massive for the sake of the unit strength. He just couldn't afford to take that damage. And for me, for a pack on a unit, duck out of cover, go. He's on 8 damage, off we go and finish him off. So Hex did work when I remembered it, because I kept forgetting because I was hungover and knackered.
Right then, so I think the final question that we're going to need to ask you, because it's the same from Mr. Pretzel Twinkie himself. How might your army change with the new Clash of Kings 22 book? I suppose, yeah. The first thing we have to talk about is, we've already mentioned it.
Yeah. This is massive for Northern Lions, because Northern Lions were like I said with Ice Queens. It's like, if you're not taking Ice Elementals, don't take Ice Queens. They're completely points and overcosted otherwise. So now you might actually take an Ice Queen in a list without Ice Elementals, which is good. Again, stuff like, I mean, you probably never take an Ice Blade anyway, it's too expensive, but just being able to have them sit with your infantry line and being properly inspiring. Snow Trolls as well, to be able to fight with infantry, which aren't Snow Trolls, the actual Snow Troll unit. No, it's big. Thanes and Frostfang might have a use now. You might see them, which is nice because they're still a pretty good unit. So this is massive. It's because a lot of the Northern Lions is conditional. And the other main one, which you're all going to be thinking of very soon, is Frim. Frim is going to be busted as all hell, because he can actually fight with armies which aren't Frostbound. He can fight with armies which aren't got Ice Queens and Ice Elementals in it. You can use him in any other list now, because he was good before.
Did you ever think you were going to say that a Frost Giant was busted?
No, because the Frost Giants aren't Frim is.
Well, yeah,
Frim definitely is.
It's great. It's still a Frost Giant. It's just a Frost Giant with a fancy name.
Yeah, and obviously he's going to benefit from the same rules that the Frost Giants get in the new update.
Yeah, so he kicks things a little bit harder now, and is very inspiring to everything.
Yeah, he's great. He's one of the things you can have in the middle of your line, and he's just going to be an absolute beast.
Yeah, he's going to operate in a similar kind of way to the Halfling Iron Beast now. But much punchier.
Yeah, it's like an Abyssal Fiend, but turned to 11.
Yeah, there's only one of them, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
No, that is a big change. But then I suppose the other one that you flagged for me was this one, which is our exclusive reveal.
Yes. This is probably stealth the biggest change in Northern Lions. You have finally got an actual combat individual who can actually do something, because he gets a horse. They found it in Northern Lions that have found a horse. They've got one. They've got to protect this horse to keep it away from all the Frostfangs that will probably eat it. But I do like the idea that the Northern Lions, how they usually fight is because a horse in a wintry environment's kind of crap. Ask the Germans on the Russian front. Horses aren't very useful up there. But as an actual fighting unit, obviously, it makes more sense for them to fight on foot. So having that one lord on a horse or on horseback who's like, nah, it's fine. If it's just me, we can actually use him in this frozen, horrible environment. It makes sense. Yeah, it still fits with the Northern Lions theme. So having him is massive, because you've actually got a combat individual now. He's not too expensive. You can still run the horn, and you actually might get some mileage out of the horn now, because he can get across the board. So yeah, him up to 6 attacks. You can give him the Snow Fox, so he's on 7. Give him Blade of Slashing. Give him Rampage thing, the item for Rampage, which we've seen as well, which was leaked at the Clash of Kings. You can actually have a really nice little guy here, which fills a massive hole in Northern Lions list, because where before you had nothing to deal with dragons, you had nothing to deal with combat individuals or war engines. This guy will do it now. It's massive. It's massive for the list. So happy to see it.
Yeah, very nice. I suppose the question is, would you run this kind of list again? Was this a hobby hero list, or is it something you enjoy using? Is it something you'd want to do again?
Oh, it's definitely hobby hero. Or if I wasn't running for the full Mantic thing, there'd be Huskars in there. I've got loads of half elves now, and they're really good fun because you can run them as troops, and they're a cool little thick chaff fighter unit. They're all quite a lot of the Northern Irish units. They're running similar price points, so you can just mix and match and run something slightly different. and not too much worse. But no, I probably wouldn't run the same list again to a tournament. I think it's got far too many holes in it. So the new Clash of Kings update, where you can have a Lord on horseback and just fill in that gap which you can't do. Like, I'd swap him out for I might drop a Lord on Frostbank to have a Lord on horseback in. Just to give you something which nothing else in your list has, which everybody else in every other book has access to. So yeah, it's a big deal. I'm happy to see it.
Any other thoughts on New Northern Alliance or Clash of Kings, the tournament?
It was a really good tournament. I really, really enjoyed it. It's an awesome venue. I'm really happy to get to play in this like swanky car showroom kind of place rather than a factory somewhere.
Yeah, it was nice. I think Nick described it as the Waitrose of wargaming venues.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It was
we
posh.
had a good time.
It had a clean toilet and it was posh.
Yeah. It had a fairly well stocked bar.
It was cheap as well. £3.50 a pint.
Yeah. Cardiff's weird though. Cardiff is a weird place.
Cardiff was a weird place. You could tell the students had 2 years of lockdown and no drinking because they were unleashing all of it straight onto the street all over Cardiff.
Running fights and everything.
No, it was a really good event. I really enjoyed it, and it was brilliant to be back.
Well run as well. Yeah.
No, it was all around the time. It was all done well. It was
loads of little goodies and everything.
Well, yeah,
I think
we've come away with almost half a ticket price back again in Mantic vouchers.
Yeah. It's one of the things where you look at and think, it's a bit expensive, that is it, compared to some other events, but like it's not. You get loads of stuff. It's great. Like Mantic are properly invested in this, and you can tell. Yeah,
it does feel like their premium flagship event, doesn't it? It's,
and they're doing it right. I mean, that's the one that everybody wants to go to. It's why we get so many new people, and it's a great one for first timers to go to.
Yeah, and it's a great one if anyone's ever thinking of coming from abroad to come to a UK event. This is the one I would take them to.
This is the event.
This is where you get to speak to the guys at Mantic. You get to see all the stuff coming out, all the the goodie bags are there. The armies on show were fantastic. There wasn't a single army there that I don't think wasn't painted to a really good standard.
Yeah, quality's come on a lot.
Yeah, really has, I think.
And there's even more good players now as well. Like the scene is really it's everyone's pushing each other a little bit further. It's great.
Yeah, it was a really, really, really good event. Enjoyed it. Right then, brilliant. Well, that is all for tonight. Obviously, I'm going to do the usual: like, share, subscribe, do all the bump with it. In a few weeks' time, we're going to be doing probably a series of videos on the Clash of Kings 22 book. I think pretty much all of us in there. Well, yeah, we've been playtesting it. I wrote half of it, so we're all aware of it. So we might start doing the content ahead of time, just because there's a lot to get through. This is definitely the biggest cock ever.
It is.
So I don't think we're going to sit and do one big video because you'll get so fed up and bored.
My voice is going now, and we've talked about 2 armies this time, and that's all we've done.
So we'll probably break it down into new artifacts, new spells, new armies, army changes, what we think might actually happen to the meta as a result of all this. We'll have a series of stuff to go through, I'm sure. But yeah, if anyone has any suggestions, anything that they want us to chat about in future videos, it doesn't have to be just us 4 idiots in the Northern Kings. I'm more than happy to rope people in that actually know what they're talking about. So if you want to hear from anybody, you want to hear from different scenes, just let us know, and I'll do my best to encourage them in.
Is it a requirement having people who know what they're talking about? Because if that's the case, we probably should kick Padley out.
No, yeah, well, he's pretty much kicked himself out anyway. He looked an awful lot like Paul Welsh at the weekend. He's got a new T-shirt now, as Paul, so it's fine. Paul is officially the 4th Northern King.
Yeah.
So like I said, drop us a comment, let us know on Facebook, or the usual ways to get in touch if there's anything you want to hear. And other than that, I think say good night, and that'll do us.
Good night. Thank you very much.